We come from Main Street, we come from farmlands, we come from cities, and we come from small towns. We are the people who believe that God and country are inseparable. We are the people who share the God-given gifts of individual rights, freedom, and liberty. We will allow no man or government to take from us what God has given to us. We are Americans. We are Canadians. We are the people who will never be silenced for the cause of freedom and liberty, for in our time to the time of generations to come, we will forever let freedom reign.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Lieutenant Stephen Rogers here at the Patriot Desk. A number of people have written to me over the past several weeks asking my opinions about the issue of term limits. Now, we're on several multimedia broadcasts tonight, and I'll be addressing people from perhaps all over the world. But I can tell you that what you're going to hear tonight is not only just for America, but is also particularly for our friends and neighbors living in Canada. Now, every Wednesday night, you know that I do address the issues regarding Canada, the issues that are taking away their freedoms and their liberties. And I'm pleased to continue to remind you that former Prime Minister Brian Peckford will be on Wednesday night. So it'll be very important that not only Canadians tune in, but people from around the world. Now, folks, my message, as I said, is not only for American citizens, but it's for our friends in Canada who are facing very tough times, and it is for our friends who love freedom and liberty throughout the world. Because the question has always been arisen, how do you deal with career politicians? How do we get rid of those who have ingrained themselves in political office, and it's near impossible to get them out of office? Well, let me share this with you. It is not impossible to remove them from office. There's enough historical evidence here in the United States that America's founding fathers strongly believed in a limited period of time that people should serve in elective office. Now, of course, those who are career politicians are going to refute everything that I'm going to say tonight. Many of them have said to me, especially when I was in office, and by the way, I was in office for 2 terms. I believe in term limits, and I left. I left because I believe that the torch should always be passed to the next generation of Americans in this country to do what they must do to serve the best interest of the people. But they'll argue, career politicians will argue, well, there are term limits. It's up to the people. They go to the polls, they vote. They could not vote for us, and they could vote for someone else, and therefore our term is limited. That is not true, folks. We all know that special interest, that money, and other elements brought into the political process develops into a political power base for those who are in office. Simply put, our founding fathers here in America never wanted public officials to be so ingrained, so obsessed in the public office that they serve, that they would become more concerned with what? They would become more concerned about their political survival than about the survival of the people that they are called to serve. Now, during the past few years, we Americans, like those in Canada, like those around the world in freedom-loving countries, we've witnessed an erosion of our rights, a disregard of the Constitution of the United States, the expansion of our government, and abuses of power by elected officials, not only in the United States Congress, where our eyes seem to be focused on, but also on every level of government. I'm talking about state legislatures. I'm talking about city governments, county governments, city governments, and also what? Perhaps the most important level of government that is pretty much neglected, I think, in every country, especially here in America, are school boards, elected school boards. In this 21st century, we are witnessing the United States Congress, state legislatures, municipal governments, and even local school boards politicizing critical issues negatively impacting our quality of life, the quality of life of every American. You could be Democrat, you could be Republican, you could be independent, but the bottom line is this: these political people who become career politicians and don't want to leave office, they are the ones, regardless of party, responsible for the direction that our country is going in. They're responsible for the future of our children and our grandchildren by the actions that they commit while they are in elective office. These career politicians, in essence, they've replaced the rule of law with the rule of political power. And the rule of political power is what? You have the money, you've got access. Now, they don't like me to say those things because it is true. But at the end of the day, it is the politician who sees the person with the dollars, who sees the person with the color green. They are the ones that they are attracted to. I've got to ask this question. I've asked it all over the country. I ask it every time I get these pieces of literature in the mail. And I'm sure those of you in Canada, United States, and other places where there are elections, you don't see one policy paper from any politician in office, the years that they're in office, up until the time an election comes, correct? Up until the time an election comes. Boy, when an election comes, your mailbox is filled with all kinds of literature as to why you should elect him or her. I've received literature from people who say they are my elected representatives who I've never seen. I don't even know who they are, but they say they've been elected. Well, I didn't vote for them. The fact of the matter is, yes, I knew they ran for office during the time of election, but I did not see them or heard from them ever until there's an election time. But these people in office, haven't they demonstrated by their actions or lack of action on behalf of the people? Haven't they demonstrated that they are more concerned about serving their best interest and perhaps the best interest of the power brokers who have the money, but they're more obsessed with and have demonstrated by their actions that they're looking out for their best interest and not the best interest of the people? Now, I dare to ask the millions of Americans watching, and perhaps those in Canada and from around the world who have free elections, I dare to ask you, I want you to think about this, can you honestly name any career politician in Congress here in America, for example, if they are, since the day they were elected to office, wealthier than at any time before they entered office? Think about that. Are they wealthier or are they poorer? We all know what the answer is. And the answer is an answer they don't want us to know about. The answer is they're wealthier. Why are they wealthier? Some of them went into office with middle income, perhaps with no income, perhaps unemployed. And those are the ones who promised that they would do what they should do on behalf of the people. But they get into office, and what happens? Money, the flow of money, the flow of power, the flow of rubbing elbows with the elites. That is what happens, folks. Believe me, you know how I know? I was there. I was involved in politics, elected office. Who knows? I may run again. But the fact of the matter is that in the past, now, and in the future, whatever I plan to do, I will never rub elbows with those people. Meaning is that I will not need them. I don't care about them. I care about the people. And it's just not me. There are many like me who would like to run for office and who do run for office, and they get discouraged and distressed over what they see and they quit. Don't give up. Nobody gives up. We continue to fight the good fight of faith. We fight the good fight of faith to win. But you see, these politicians who have made a career out of what's supposed to be a temporary office do everything they could to instill fear, to instill distress, to instill depression. But we should never let that happen, folks, because we should do everything in our power, and we do have the power within the framework, at least here, of the Constitution of the United States, the power of the people in Canada, the power of the people all over the world, the power of free people. You see, the difference between free people, and I emphasize free, and those who are not free, well, Lieutenant, who's not free? Yes, there are people like in China who are enslaved to the government and communist countries who are enslaved to the government, but I'm not talking about that enslavement. I'm talking about enslavement to money, enslavement to special interests, enslavement to power. Those are the people who we now have in office. Not all of them. There are few, far too many few, who are good representatives of the people, and they must lose a lot of sleep night and day trying to get their job done. But they get it done, I believe, through the power of prayer, through the grace of God, and through the power and support of the good people of each and every one of our countries and the good people here in America. But you see, I've said over and over again to people around the country who I've had the opportunity to to see, to greet, to make speeches at their organizations that slavery hasn't ended. Slavery changed it from chains on people's arms and legs to chains on their bank accounts, to chains on their homes. I mean, to chains that just grip their hearts, souls, and spirits, because with those chains of slavery that are invoked by those in power, they instill fear. And when they instill fear, you no longer see people going out to protest peacefully. You no longer see people who have the desire to go out and vote. They discourage people from doing what they should do in order to preserve, protect, and defend their freedom and liberty. So the two words of those who are in power, of those who are trying to enslave all of us, the two words that they fear, the two words that run a chill up and down their spine, the two words are term limits. Folks, you start reverberating around your country, around America. Whenever I speak about term limits, whenever others speak about term limits, boy, oh boy, the defense mechanisms go up in the career politicians and their power brokers, and before you know it, all hell is breaking loose. We can't have term limits. We need experienced politicians in office. We do. Look where experience has gotten America. We've got the worst economy now in the history of this country. Our military is weak. It's an embarrassment to see this president and the Democrat Socialist Communist Party of America walk around. Look where it's gotten us. Look where experience has gotten the Canadians just north of our border. And I bring them up because Justin Trudeau, has become, at least in my view, a clear national security problem for the United States to deal with. There's a guy that has really turned his back on freedom-loving people, but Trudeau and others around the world who are enslaved, they're enslaved, folks, to power brokers. They're enslaved to the people who give them the power that they need. And what happens to them will never happen to us who are freedom-loving people. What happens to them is that because they have a collar around their neck, and the power brokers, those with money, those who want access, when they tug the Justin Trudeaus, the Joe Bidens, right, and others around the world, they gotta move, folks. They gotta go along with that tug. You see, so they're enslaved. We're not. They want to enslave us, but we're not. We're so not enslaved to them that we are still standing. And the tyrants of the world who have been able to make this, what was supposed to be a temporary job in politics, a vocation and a career, most of them, after a certain amount of time where there are no term limits, they're gone. They're gone. And new people come in to replace them. But then those people become obsessed with the power and the money and the might, and they want to enslave us. Why? Because they're enslaved to those who want to enslave them. So you see, it's like a ripple effect. But we, the people, have the power to put an end to all this. And I've said this all along. You know, at the birth of our nation, Benjamin Franklin, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, a whole host of American leaders actually believed that term limits would prevent what? Now think about this. Our founding fathers, they wrote the Constitution. They wrote the Declaration of Independence. They actually advocated term limits. They advocated term limits because they knew it would prevent political office holders from obsessing with what? The trappings of the office. And believe me, there are so many trappings of the office. I remember when I was elected to office, it just took 2 weeks for people to start visiting me, calling me. Would you like to have a job? How about your kids? You got teenage kids. Maybe we could give them a job. How would you like this? How would you like that? Is there any chance we can do this or do that for you? Folks, it's very easy, believe me, very easy to say no. But most politicians don't say no, they say yes, because they really begin to believe that, you know, this could be pretty beneficial for me. Who's going to know? Who's going to care? You know, I got to help my kids, right? But the fact of the matter is that you took an oath of office. Politicians took an oath of office to do what? To serve the best interests of the people, not your own self-serving political interests. The trappings of the office. Don't let anyone ever lead you to believe that there are no trappings. There are on every single level of government. there are. So political people today need courage, they need strength, they need prayer, they need to know that they need to stay away from that. And since most of them don't stay away from it, then we, the people, have to take action, right? We have to take action. We have to put limits on the number of terms that they serve in the office that they're holding. So these individuals, our founding fathers, knew that they needed to invoke term limits, or that at least term limits should have been invoked during the time that after they took office, in order to prevent the mess that we're seeing today. George Washington, our first president, he self-imposed term limits. He didn't want to become a king. He wanted to be president. And he decided to serve a couple of terms, and off he went. Now, I concur with our founding fathers that a prolonged concentration of power is not good, folks. Prolonged concentration of power is not good on any level of government. Yes, we focus on that concentration of power on our federal governments, but we need to focus on state, county, and local governments down to school board level. It's amazing what people will do to get elected to a local school board. Here in New Jersey, we've had people have fistfights. We've had people do all sorts of terrible things during an election to get elected to what? School boards. It's incredible. What is this all about? What do you think you have power over? And then go to municipal governments around New Jersey, around the country. Who's cheating? Who's putting out slanderous things? Character assassination. It goes on. I see here in New Jersey, we have a congressional race coming up, and it bothers me. It really does, to see Republicans fighting Republicans. We're the party that believes in the Constitution. We're the party that believes that people should have the right to speak up without being instilled with fear of speaking up. But what's going on? You got Republicans character assassinating other Republicans. You've got Democrats who've completely destroyed their party. But my point is this: a lot of this, folks, a lot of this comes from where? It comes from people who become obsessed with the power they have. And it's not just the candidates, it's campaigns. It's the power brokers. It's the people with the collar around the neck of the career politician who pulls and pulls and pulls. It was Thomas Jefferson who said this: to prevent every danger which might arise to American freedom from continuing too long in office, it is earnestly recommended that we set an obligation of the holder of that office to go out after a certain period. Thomas Jefferson, one of our founding fathers. He believed in term limits. Connecticut's Roger Sherman wrote that representatives ought to return home and mix with the people. When does that happen? When do politicians mix with the people? I said it in my opening. They mix with the people when they're ready to run for office. Have you seen your congressman lately? I've never seen the congressional representative in my district. Never. They came around once during when they were running for office the first time. I understand they're going to come around again, but they're not going to be knocking at my door. I tell you what, folks, I really mean it. Have you seen your congressman, congresswoman here in America at any time? This is why I address union leaders across this country, union members across America. Have you seen the elected representatives ever that your union leaders endorse? You know, the representatives they endorse, the ones taking your jobs, the one that shut down the energy oil pipelines, the Keystone pipeline between us and Canada, and cost you your jobs. Have you seen them? Have you seen any of the people that your union leaders have endorsed to become a congressman or congresswoman? I'll bet you haven't. And yet you allow your leadership to go out and elect the very people that are taking your legs out from under you, that are taking meals off of your children's plates, who are taking your mortgages. You're allowing that to happen. Why? Like I said before, enslavement. This is what career politicians do. If you notice, career politicians are usually endorsed by union leaders. Career politicians are usually endorsed by political power brokers, not the people. This is why we, the people, must, and we can within the framework of the law in the United States of America, and you could do it in Canada, you could do it elsewhere, It takes time, it takes effort, but we must, folks. We must. In order for the survival of freedom and liberty in all of our countries, especially at this hour in Canada and the United States of America, we must invoke term limits. You know, it was George Mason. He said that nothing can be as essential to the preservation of a Republican government as periodic rotation. What did he mean by that? That's term limits. Now, I second Mason's statement to include not only national, but state and local government levels. Citizen legislators no longer exist on many levels of government. Why? Because on many levels of government, the citizen legislators became career politicians. Does it make sense for people to be in office, not just past 2 terms, 10 years, but 20, 30, 40, 50 years? We've got people in office in 60, they've been there for 60 years, folks. What is up with that? And are they really not beholden to anyone but the people? Folks, that is a fantasy. Anyone who is in office that long, believe me, they're beholden to somebody, and it is not the people in whom they are called to serve. What was once viewed as a privilege to serve has been transformed by far too many political office holders into a lifelong career that pays dividends to who? Do you think it pays dividends to you? Do you think it pays dividends to me? No, it pays dividends to those who have made a career out of this. And you know what the sad part of the whole story is that it's not only our quality of life that is affected by these career politicians, it is the quality of life, the future of our children and of our grandchildren. Most of these dividends and benefits you will never enjoy. I will never enjoy, but they enjoy it. They enjoy it because that's what they live on. Limiting the terms of elected officials who produce citizens legislators of people who reflect the hardworking taxpayers in every home, on every street, and in every neighborhood of this nation is essential for the survival of our country. Term-limited elected officials would be more in harmony with public opinion, thus limiting the power of not only the elected official, but limiting the power of special interests that he or she becomes obligated to. Now, let me give you an example. Teachers' unions. I love teachers. I think public school teachers are some of the greatest educators in the world. But they have allowed their union to be hijacked by who? By politicians. Here in America, over the past 2 years, with COVID and all this other stuff going on, it was the unions who were dictating to the school district what would be taught in schools, what type of education children would be taught. In fact, parents today in America, and we know this, in very few cities, especially in the Democrat cities, have little or nothing to say about the education that their children receive. Now, in Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis just passed some laws that make it very clear that is the parents and not the school leaders who are going to dictate what their children are going to be taught or not taught. That's a parental responsibility. That's a parental right. But you see, I said earlier, this is why I mentioned local school boards. Little by little by little, the career politicians erode the power base of the public from when? From when our children are in school to the time they graduate high school and college. That's what happens. And that's what is happening. So education in America needs to be taken over again by parents, not given to union leaders who do what? Who beg for crumbs, who will accept crumbs from politicians who do what? Who give them the crumbs to give to those who are members of their unions, and then when the meat comes, the union leaders keep it. If that's not true, then I'd like to have some member of a union tell me, especially a teachers union, tell me that you have the right to educate children. I've heard from teachers all over America, and they tell me they are now told that they got to teach to the test, meaning children will have to pass a certain test. They pass the test, they move on. They move on. Who is allowing all this to happen? The career politicians. And who allows the career politicians to let it happen? The people. That's right. Ultimately, in a democracy, it's we, the people, who have the ability to either keep them in office or get them out of office. These politicians have a clear disconnect from the people in whom they are called to serve. They have replaced their connection with the people, they've replaced that with a connection to special interest. Therefore, we must, and we have the ability, and we have the power to invoke term limits at every level of government in America. Now, I have no issue with elected officials who keep their commitment to the people on one level of government, and then after a couple of terms, move on and want to move to a higher office. That's fine. That's where your experience becomes an asset. When I was on a school board, I was elected to a school board here in New Jersey. I served at one term. I ran for the city council, our board of commissioners. I got elected. 2 terms, I left. But the time I was on the school board gave me a good education as to how school boards operate. So no problem with that. You want to run for office, get elected, but after 2 terms, take a hike. You want to run for another office? Good. After 2 terms, take a hike. Be prepared to understand that once you're elected to office, it's not a career. It's going to be a temp job, a temporary job. It's been said that America begins in our homes and in our neighborhoods, in the living room and around the kitchen table. But I'm going to add something to that, folks. And I'm going to add this element about where America begins and maybe where nations like Canada begin and other freedom-loving nations begin. I suggest to you that the American political system, the process of the political system begins on the school board level. I believe that it begins on the school board level. It begins in our city halls where citizen legislatures and not career politicians should be serving the people. Because it is on the school boards, it is in city government that the people having the discussions in their homes, in their living rooms, and in their dining rooms, and around that dinner table, it is from there that they begin entering the political system of the United States of America. So we must, as a country here in America, we must do what has to be done to save our country and to save freedom and liberty in our country. It was President Abraham Lincoln who said of America that no one is quite sure, listen to this one, no one is quite sure whether in the absence of imaginative leadership, a government so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. Are we enduring as a nation? When Lincoln talked about imaginative leadership, he was talking about thinking out of the box. He was talking about, you know what? Ladies and gentlemen who are running for office, think about term limits. Think about serving only a few terms and then pass the torch. That's imaginative leadership. Are we enduring as a nation here in America? Not at this point. Not at this point. We will. We always bounce back. We will. Well, we need leaders to speak up. We need leaders who are going to say, you know what? I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to run for office. And I'm going to get elected, and I'm going to get reelected, and I'm going home. That's what I did. Came home, and look what I'm doing. I'm still out there fighting the good fight of faith, like many others can. I'm trying to prove a point to political office holders on every level of government. Don't get sucked into the trappings of the office. Ego, pride, all that comes in, believe me, comes into play. I know it. But you got to put that in check, and you got to do what's right for the people. So the people are going to do what's right for the country if you don't do for what's right for the people. I say this, that imaginative leadership would support term limits for the good of our nation, from city halls across America to the halls of Congress in Washington, D.C. Imaginative leadership and bringing term limits to bear will mean the survival of freedom and liberty, not only here in America, but throughout the world where freedom and liberty still stand. So if you ever wanted the question as to what to do, what would the answer be as to what to do with regard to these career politicians? It's going to take time. Work hard and just shout from the rooftop those 2 words, term limits. And once you shout from the rooftop term limits, you're going to see a lot of people have a chill run up and down their spine. And the fear that they've instilled in the people will turn to a faith in the people, a faith in God for guidance, a faith and strength to do what we must do in order to put an end to career politicians who have served nothing in the best interest of the people, but who have served only for their best interest, a chill that will put them on ice, a chill that will cause everyone around your country, no matter where you're from, who you are, what party you belong to, but a chill that will cause all of us to stand up and to shout out not only those 2 words, term limits, but those 3 words, let freedom ring. I close with this, my friends, and this is to those political people watching tonight. Understand this. There's a scripture in the Bible that says, love not the world, neither the things of the world. Love not the world, neither the things of the world, because they disappear. They're temporary. They go. But the one thing that stays, the one thing that truly stays is loving God and loving the people whom you serve. So try that. Try loving God. Try loving the people who you are called to serve. You try that, and I can tell you, it works. You know how I know it works? You're looking at a guy that did that. Yep. And not only me, but there are thousands of us around who have did that. I just thank God I've been given the platform and the ability to do what I'm doing now, sharing these words of wisdom with people who love freedom and who love liberty. Good evening, folks. Thank you for joining me. We'll see you Wednesday night here on this broadcast. I've got to tell you, I'm so encouraged that Brian Peckford, one of the founding fathers, if you will, if I could use the American terms here, a signature of the Charter of Rights of the nation of Canada. I'm so thrilled about that. And I'm thrilled about what you're doing in Canada. You're standing up. You're fighting through prayer. You're fighting through doing what is within the framework of the law, and you're not giving up. You're not giving up. You know what I heard this morning? You know what I heard this morning when I woke up and I looked north of New Jersey? I went like this, and I heard a roar come out of the north, a figurative roar, if you will, but a roar. And then I listened and listened and listened. And I heard the national anthem of Canada. And then I heard the words, let freedom ring. And I'll bring up Canada a lot, folks, because I love what the people are doing there in their fight for freedom. And here in America, my beloved country, we're going to make sure that we don't let what has happened in Canada happen here. Because every time I wake up, I walk out the front of my house and down my street, I may not hear a voice coming from the north, but I see a very silent and powerful voice on the homes of the people who live around me. And you know what that voice is? Let freedom ring. Thank you all. God bless you. See you Wednesday night.